God damn.
I just honestly couldn't believe that they even said that.
Oh, yeah, I like that. That is amazing.
Oh, that is so interesting. Good evening. It is evening here, as you can see from the... there is no light outside. But hello and welcome to the art show. This is the second time Nigel and I have ever done something where you can also see us and doing a podcast. But yeah.
First time on a sofa though, Nick.
It is the first time on the sofa, and welcome to my living room.
Yeah, welcome to Nick's living room. Wonderful living room here. I feel like it's odd broadcasting on a sofa in a relaxed way. In the past, we were always like in a studio or sat up straight. It was always so tense. So this is
looking opposite each other.
Looking opposite. Yeah, this is also quite strange.
Gazing into each other's eyes.
A long while since I've gazed into your eyes.
Oh, cute.
It's good to be back. Well, we thought really that we wanted to discuss the process of creating a podcast, what that's like, what the challenges involved with doing that are, I suppose, and just in a really broad sense, you know, how did the art show come together? Because this is, you said so, it's 2 years on, isn't it, from the last time we actually recorded?
Yeah, it must be, if not even longer. I'm not 100% sure. I've not got the actual date, but it's been a long while. And actually, this is obviously our season finale of the Art Show podcast, of the 6 episodes that we've put out, and we wanted to reflect on that and look back at those conversations which initially happened on the radio that was then brought to a podcast audience. So that is essentially what we're going to be delving into over however long this is going to be.
I think for the benefit of people that maybe are listening to this for the first time, listening to the show for the first time, probably just explain what the art show is, I suppose, and how that came about quickly, because it was something that wasn't really pre-planned.
No.
We had no intention of ever being sat here right now, no intention of editing a podcast together or recording a radio show. It was something that was born out of lockdown, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, hugely. So we needed an outlet ourselves, but we also realised that there was a need to support the creative industries when there was really no creative industry. We went on many lockdown walks, and realised that we were kind of struggling actually, and we needed an outlet to be able to kind of process what was going on, work out what we could do, how can we talk to more creatives to find out and get support from them, but equally provide a platform for them to have support and show work that they were putting on during lockdown. It was very nice to have something that we were allowed to go and do every Sunday.
It was like one of the only things you were allowed to do, wasn't it?
It was.
Volunteering was one of those exclusions. And I think even when we started it, we had no idea that it was going to go on for a year and a half.
No.
On a weekly basis. We may have missed a week here and there, but really we did have someone in that studio every week throughout lockdown investigating their creative practice. We did a few live streams as well, one-off events. And I feel like during that period, reflecting back kind of after 2 years, I do feel like we were trying to push the boundaries even then of what a podcast could be and is, in that we were also including live performances. We were going to, you remember the Emerge exhibitions? That was a residency showcase we were part of, where we live streamed out an entirely improvised radio show.
Yeah, I don't know if I would recommend doing an improvised radio show. It was a stressful experience. One, just trying to work out the tech and getting it set up. Then we kind of went to start recording, and we were like, we don't have a show.
What do we do?
We had some pre-planned stuff, in the sense of we had recordings from the Bath Festival, which was a really big highlight. We went and recorded some musicians just after they came off stage, went into the Radio Bath outside broadcast unit and recorded them. And that was a really interesting and quite really amazing experience, actually.
That was, yeah.
And we used those as kind of a bedrock to give us a little bit of a break during the live stream, to basically work out what we're going to do next. And we did that for about an hour. So you can check that out on our YouTube.
Is it still up there?
It's still up there.
Oh, amazing.
And it's an interesting social experiment.
It is, to be honest. It is a really interesting social experiment. A good piece of content. Very different to the work we did on radio. And again, very different to the podcasting work as well. Like the art show always had a kind of general, I suppose, feel and almost brand to it in a way, like that carried through all of the work that we did. But each of those different explorations, I think, were quite distinct. Like the radio show, what I'm getting at, like the radio show was very different from our live stream work, was very different from the podcast work, because the radio show really, as you said, was like a 2-hour long show interspersed with music and there was interviews, there was lots of different segments, whereas the podcast itself was quite an interesting experience because it was about editing a specific part of that show, which was the conversations with the creatives, down into something, a kind of bite-sized, half an hour, 45-minute creative listen that offered insights into what it's like to be an artist, what it's like to be a musician, and we had a range of different guests on, didn't we?
Yeah,
this series.
So many different guests, and the idea of having a podcast and creating what has now become the Art Show podcast, actually, we kind of had an inkling that we knew we wanted to go down that route eventually when we were doing the radio show, which is why when we had our guests, we said we are keeping it to 20 minutes, these conversations. One, because we wanted to be very specific and also trying to make it as engaging as possible. But we knew that was a good length of podcast to 20 minutes, half an hour, that shorter length form of podcasting. We knew we wanted to do that and pull these conversations then. So actually these conversations that we had, were from a couple of years ago that we were able to put out. And we had, as you can listen back to, Tilda, an amazing novelist, and is doing fantastic things. Just learning a language to be able to write a book, I think, is a pretty big statement.
That was an amazing conversation. I think after that, we had Gabby, did we, after that?
Yep, I think so.
Gabby Finnegan, and again, an incredible writer, had an amazing performance featuring in that too. That was our first experiment, I think, with live performance.
Yes, and actually that conversation as kind of like a behind the scenes. We were going to do one of our live, it wasn't going to be a live broadcast, as in live streaming kind of aspect, but we were going to do a show at Sparkfest.
Yeah.
Which in the gardens of the Holborn Museum. So at a theatre festival, we were going to bring our show to the gardens of the Holborn Museum in Bath and do a show, and we were going to have performance elements, which is where we brought Gabby on. The rain called that off, and we thought we've got to have this. We've got to create something from this. And Gabby came down to the studio and recorded what you have now heard as the podcast. And that was our kind of first endeavor into the podcasting world of creating something very bespoke that had this kind of performance element, which I haven't really heard in any other podcast, really. I may not have come across it in the sense of that
agreed.
There is something for you to physically hear from the podcast about something that they've created, if that's a monologue, and actually kind of reflecting on the show. That is something that I've not seen before.
I think it's hard with that element, specifically with podcasting. This is something I feel like we've buffered up against quite a few times, in that it's okay to broadcast out material that isn't licensed. So new writing, anything really that's been written by the person that's in there reading it. But if you want to do something like a play that has been licensed, I don't even know if the licenses exist for a performance of, say, a published play on that medium. And I feel like it's part of the reason as well why the podcast, for example, didn't have any music, and why a lot of podcasts don't have music, because there simply just isn't a mechanism, as far as I'm aware, there still isn't a mechanism even now to include that kind of content in, which is interesting, because I remember being fascinated kind of and trying to overcome that challenge at the time, then realizing that we couldn't really do that. And that kind of challenge in itself led to us focusing on, okay, well, what can we do? What kind of content can we get out? And then Gabby, obviously being a fascinating, amazing writer, comes in, performs her own work, and we suddenly have this amazing concept that had come out of those kind of constraints, I suppose. Who was it after Gabby?
After Gabby, we had Lark Hall.
Lark Hall, wow, algorithmic artistry. And he continues to innovate. He's just got a huge amount of funding to take his live coded performance. So he's a classically trained pianist who combines that with live visuals that react to the music that he's playing. But I think at the moment he's doing a funded project where that is actually becoming something that other musicians and other artists can kind of take off the shelf and use in their own creative performance. And I mean, that conversation was just mind-blowing. Again, featured live performance as well.
Yeah, and actually what was quite interesting about with Lark Halls, when you've got a piece of performance, in the sense of, like with Gabby, it was her work. Same with Greedy Pig. We had a monologue. With Tilda, we had a reading from her book. You have to actively engage with what they're saying to hear the story. But with Lark Hall, it was kind of like here's a couple of minutes to reflect on what's just been said with some really nice music, because obviously a lot of his work has that visual element and you're not having that with the podcast, but you're hearing the beautiful piano that he's playing. And it kind of, when I realised when I was listening back to it, I was going, I'm now just reflecting on what I've just heard.
Yeah.
And it was really nice to not have that just after the podcast ends. It had it during the podcast. And I think that's quite a interesting and kind of thought-provoking way of keeping the engagement during a podcast.
Absolutely.
Oh, here's 2 minutes where you can just think back.
Think back, take some reflection.
Yeah.
They do tend to sandwich. If I have ever heard little snippets of content or performance, they don't tend to be in the middle. You're right. And it is a really good mechanism to keep the momentum of the podcast flowing, and also just contextualize so much more about what the artist is doing, because obviously it's a spoken medium, isn't it? It's like, obviously the crux of the medium is having conversations and essentially interviewing people, but if you can contextualize that with some of their work in the middle, it completely radically changes the listening experience. Because with art in general, I mean, I listen to lots of podcasts, lots of conversations with creatives talking about what they do, but really I do want to see it, you know, or hear it, or engage with it. So I feel like we're kind of onto something there. I hope we do more of that if we can in the future. But as I'm sure we're going to discuss, it hasn't been easy, has it, putting this podcast together?
No, it hasn't. And as you can see with the dated, parts of each episode, there was a consistency for a couple of weeks, and then it stopped. But even prior to that, there was a long time where we were sitting on these podcasts and sitting on the recordings, waiting to do something with it. And maybe should we have a little chat about back kind of at the start of that process about why, I suppose why it kind of took long.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one as well.
There isn't one why either.
Yeah, no, definitely not. There was a range of different personal circumstances as well, just life, being busy. But also, it is amazing that we even did it, because when you've got old footage and you've got some material that you might want to put out, it's kind of like, okay, let's get this material out there. If you then don't actually get it out there for, say, like 6 months to a year, I think many people would maybe just disregard that whole project and go, I'm not going to get this out. So the first hurdle was really going, is this still relevant? Listening back, I remember us listening back to the podcast, listening back to some of the footage. That was a really enjoyable experience, and going, actually, this is relevant. There's so much value in this content here. And then making the decision to go, okay, how do we take this and turn it into a podcast? Because I think recording live on radio has its huge benefits in that it forces you into a completely live state. It's very difficult to structure really heavily what it is you're going to say. But then also, when you listen back to some of the material from radio, particularly me, I feel as a presenter, I would like what I'm trying to say to be far more clipped, to be much more to the point. And I think part of our thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, from moving from this kind of old content to releasing it as a podcast was going, well, actually, we need to kind of chop this down. There's this editing process that is essential that happened there. I don't know what you think about that.
No, definitely, because you're having that kind of thought when you're doing live. You're like, we are coming to music at some point, and you have to. You are ad-libbing, you're filling time, you're doing that. But in a podcast, you can be really curated. So we were discussing for quite a while, like, are we going to have a curated podcast where maybe we have, if there's similarities in some of the conversations that we've had with these artists, and there were, could we link that together and kind of narrate a story? So talking about maybe, so we had bits about writing, but then also from Tilda giving us the insight into how to become a published novelist, and having the link between Gabby and Tilda, and we could have narrated that and then done a bit of research into this, that and the other, and gone, and this is what you're learning in this episode. We knew that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that was a big delay. And it did take us a while, because you freelance, I've got a full-time job.
Yeah.
Both you're filling your time till the evening, and then the evening to then go, I'm going to get on my laptop and now listen to loads of podcasts and start doing that. Again, the knowing of that, and like knowing the amount of work that endeavor takes kind of makes you not do it.
Absolutely. And it's difficult, I feel, because like, just as a bit of context as well, Nick and I went to university together, didn't we?
Yes.
And I feel like it's very different when you're in an environment like university or some kind of training program where you have money coming in, you have a space where you're working on something all of the time. But as you said, you have jobs, you're trying to work all of this around your responsibilities, and to be honest, just being tired as well. Like, I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes as I've aged, I've got a lot more specific about when I can and can't do work. So I might have a really bad day and I just cannot pull myself to do that creative thing that I wanted to do in the evening. Whereas when I was younger, I feel like, yeah, cool, I can jump on that, can do all of this. So putting that podcast together and the gaps in the release schedule very much reflect the challenges of living a life as creatives, whether it be it full time or not, you know, in this kind of modern landscape. I mean, we're recording this now at, what time is it? Like 9 o'clock at night or something like that?
Yeah, 10 to 9.
I remember we were meant to do it last weekend,
Yeah.
and I messaged you just saying, oh, Nick, I just need some time away from the laptop, actually. Yeah. I feel like that's always been a hallmark of our relationship, is that we're really accommodating of both of where we're both at and what's going on and what we're feeling. And it's not like you're going to jump on me and go, no, we've got to do it. Got to do this. We must absolutely do this now. But we got those first episodes out. We did a good job of keeping to a fairly consistent schedule. It was a lot of work. And then it just fell away, didn't it?
Yeah. Again, it was just kind of like personal circumstances meant we had to have time doing other things. And we had this conversation a lot about we're not getting paid to do it. And again, that's totally fine, because there's a lot of value that we've actually found more value on reflection than probably in the moment.
Yeah.
From doing the radio show and doing the podcast. But we have to survive. We have to, in the sense of having money coming in to survive, but then also having time to eat, having time to relax, having time to see loved ones. Like, you have to have that time to do that. And it's really tricky to find the time to do in your evenings to do this.
I think, like, doing it on the money point as well, at this point in our lives, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like there was definitely a point in my life where having money coming in was good, but now I really want more money, frankly. Not loads. That's not what drives me personally, but I do have some goals and ambitions as I move now into my 30s, so 31 now. You know, realistically, when you're working on a project like this, and it isn't funded, it's not bringing in income, you're looking further down the line and going, well, we might be able to get sponsorship for this, or we could get a grant application in, but is that even going to be enough, you know?
Yeah, but also knowing what we knew, the quality and the ability that we had, and we had a lot of connections to get amazing people to come onto our show, and wish we could offer more than just sell your product, which is a conversation we had, is that the conversation about the industry was more beneficial for the wider audience than I'm selling this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we knew that the show could generate an income if we had the time. Again, it always kind of comes back to that, to find sponsorship, or to we knew it could generate an income, which actually, because we had this kind of level of expectation in ourselves, which is another reason why things take time with us, and things didn't come out, is because we know there's a quality that we want to deliver. We didn't kind of want to just make do. Especially for myself, I've come to realize that there is some parts of the work that I can put out that just making do is still like a good enough quality to pass.
Yep.
There was a point when just make do actually was, then this work is actually a bit crap.
No, absolutely.
But it's kind of, every time you hit that next level, you want to hit the next level. We've now come to a multi-camera setup to do a podcast.
I don't look at it. It's quite amazing, really, on the sofa. Sorry.
No. And it's also why we've you can see it in our wide. I want you to see that it's quite a raw setup that we've got here. But I think it's it really has been the metric that for me, I've definitely had to go through every time we make a decision is do we have the time to actually do it to the level that we want to be able to do it at?
Absolutely. And I think, like, one thing for me as well with that was, over time, and I don't want to be like, this isn't critical, but I think it's just being honest about artists and the landscape of the arts. I think I'm always more than willing to give up time
Yeah. Oh,
to people who are interested from the perspective of, I'm really interested in discussing art, my practice and creativity. But I feel like over time, where I had less support was when you've got people sitting in front of you, quite frankly, that are just there for the promotional aspect. And that, again, that's not a criticism of them, because it's essential marketing. Unfortunately, I feel quite sad that it's essential in a way.
Yeah.
And it's hard out there to get exposure and get your work. But you can't just be walking into a room when it's just about you. When you've got people that are kind of offering you this opportunity because they're just trying their best and it's not funded. You know, I really kind of struggled with that aspect. I kind of struggle even now with that aspect of the arts, where I'm potentially going to work with someone or collaborate with someone, and it's like, what's the intention? You know, what is it that you want to get out of this? And it's absolutely fine to have some, in my opinion, to have some personal goals and say, this is going to really help me in this area here, and go on and do this. But yeah, if you're just walking in and you're like, oh, this is great, these guys are doing all this stuff and I can just get this free recording, off I go, that's not really the vibe that was driving me. So it was the money, and then that became tricky. I mean, we had lovely guests.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that, I'm not really thinking of anyone specifically there. Broadly, most of our guests were lovely.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's tricky to get that right kind of mix of time, people in the room that are there for the right reasons, the kit and equipment, money, all of that kind of stuff, etc. It's kind of weird to just do a podcast just the two of us now.
Yeah, these are the filler sections of the radio show.
Yeah, they are,
where
right?
we was like, we're going to now we pick a topic and let's just talk about it. And we came across some show notes earlier, which was kind of like, let's talk about, like, we in our notes for, like, on the 29th of August show or whatever it was on the radio, and it was like, let this section talk about how procrastination can lead to more creativity. And it's kind of like, here's a stimulating question that we're just going to chat about, because we know that's the section we're going to do it before we then have a guest coming in 20 minutes. That's what this is right now.
Absolutely.
That's the only time that we had it. And
we were doing that without ChatGPT as well. No, seriously though, can you imagine having ChatGPT? Because a lot of the times we were putting those segments together in like 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah. Huge amounts of prep required to get that radio show together. It's like, right, yeah, let's just do a segment about this. And I do feel like, rightly or wrongly, now I probably would have turned to ChatGPT, typed in, give me 5 tips on how to overcome procrastination, and off you go. Like, the idea of that, even speaking that out loud, doesn't sound that interesting, and it doesn't sound like the most honest approach to putting content together. But realistically, if that had been the aim, and we were doing a radio show tomorrow, and I was time strapped, probably would have done that, to be honest. To be honest.
No, definitely. If it could be like, anything, even the kind of social media element to what we do. If we need to, if we were strapped for time, why not? Because to be honest, I don't read the social media bio bits.
No,
on most posts.
Not.
I might do it for a handful, but generally I'm looking at the images. And
see, I'm the title, so you're the images.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm the title. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I will be pulled
for a
in by
podcast.
visual.
Are you talking about on social media?
Just in general.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I'm going to click on a link based on like website stuff, because particularly with like stock images and stuff, I'm just like, what's the title, and like, who is it?
Yeah.
That's putting the content out there, I suppose. Same with podcasting as well. I'm a sucker for a title.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that you would go for the imagery, being a videographer, photographer, and stuff like that. Yeah. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, for socials, I'm drawn to that. For like, when I'm choosing a podcast, I suppose title, because generally, I think there's only a handful of podcasts that do bespoke cover art for every episode. We happen to be one of them, and giving us extra work to do that.
Key mistake that we learned from now. And actually, we've just been editing everything together for the podcast that we released this evening, haven't we?
Yes.
And I was sitting there moaning through writing the copy. Like, absolutely love the company, really passionate about getting this episode out, but writing the copy and trying to find new ways of essentially saying, these people are amazing and really interesting, you know, because they are, was really, really difficult. And then doing custom covers, if we continue, I hope that we can deleverage off doing bespoke covers for each episode. What do you reckon?
No.
You want to keep doing it? You like it?
I like seeing the effort.
Yeah.
But then obviously I don't see many people doing it. So and actually the people that I have seen do it release it with a general cover photo and go back a later date and change it.
I remember you showing me that actually.
Yeah.
When we were plotting it out at the time.
Yeah. So
we were
you might see some parallels with our cover art and the David Tennant podcast with
the David Tennant podcast.
Because it's a great podcast again. It has amazing guests.
It is. Yeah.
So
what, like, look. Moving forward then?
Yeah.
We've kind of discussed, I suppose, a bit about how to put a podcast together.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the challenges with the art space. Looking forward, 2 years on, sitting in your lounge.
Yeah.
What
are
you thinking
here.
about? Yeah, I know.
I didn't live here 2 years ago.
Where were you?
I'd have been in Chippenham.
Yeah. So what are you thinking about then, in terms of, like, in the context of what we've just discussed? Yeah. Like, can we move forward with this show? Is there opportunity, I suppose?
Well, I think we've got to look at what opportunity there is now. And the opportunity is we both now live in Bristol.
Yes.
And Bristol has a whole host of interesting things going on. And it's a city that needs to be explored. And that opens up potential opportunities about what we do. How can we bring this form into that? We've toyed with the idea. It's not saying we're doing it. We've toyed with the idea of taking the show and just doing something in a venue. So doing it at the museum and exploring through a kind of arts creative approach, what that space is.
Yeah.
Doing it in a library, and we go, I'm going to just talk to camera for 5 minutes. You're going to go find a book and bring an interesting fact back to me.
Your memory's so good.
It. Yeah. But there also is some amazing people.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? So I went to spoken word poetry night last night, and I was reminded that at the local level, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier, at a local level, when people are just doing their art for the sake of doing their art, it's wonderful, it's beautiful. Spoken word poets up at the Bristol Fringe, which is a wonderful small venue. In the back room, there was 24 different slots.
Wow.
They're there just to share their work. For me, that is like a particular type of art, or a kind of form of the work, when it's just motivated by, we just want to do this, that is unlike work that has financial motivations and other motivations, like I'm doing this just for a social media post. But as we've talked about, we struggle with doing this just for the sake of doing it. So it's very difficult to find a route forward, find a kind of way, I suppose, of accessing local creatives that are doing that kind of stuff in a way.
But that is content for us to learn. It's to speak to those people and go, why do you do it? What seems like just for to put your work out there. And actually it kind of links back to like what artists used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would, and there wasn't a sense of privilege to that. They're normally people that could live rent free and all of that, and had time to just be artists.
Yeah.
But it kind of, there's definitely a parallel to that sort of time and artists then. There are artists that do it now. I'd say people that take things to like Edinburgh Fringe, again, could be an amazing podcast.
Yeah,
taking it up there and then seeing work and reflecting on work there. But also, again, it's reflecting kind of on work sounds quite boring, actually. It's kind of like, and that was really good. We would need to find a hook to what we're learning from it, and make that different every time, not just a reviewing show. I don't think there's any need for the art show to be a reviewing show.
Oh, that's the other thing. I think that's key, what you've hit on there. Like, regardless of what you're trying to do, if the model is going to be the same every time you do it, first couple of episodes are fantastic, but then you get 20 deep, and it's like, how do I ask this question in a different way? So yeah, you do need the hook, and it needs to almost be reactive and bespoke in a way to exactly the person that you are kind of focusing on. In the case of Edinburgh Fringe, like I'm really interested in what goes on with like the travels up and down.
Yeah,
it's that kind of stuff, like performers, the kind of stuff that you never hear about. So performers that are maybe traveling from here for however long it takes on the train. I don't even know, like 5-6 hours. Like what are they doing on the train? I'd like to just jump on a train with some of those performers and kind of chat to them, see them bored out their mind, and talk about the work, and then see them on the way back home really deflated, because we've both been performers. We know what it's like after you've done a performance and you're knackered and you don't want to talk to anyone on the way home. That's kind of like an area that I'd quite like to explore. I can
see now at least two episodes coming out during Edinburgh Fringe, 6 hours long on the train journey there, but the whole time you're just hearing over the tannoy, ding dong, ding dong. We're going through Birmingham,
and like
cheer for Edinburgh.
What I like about what we do as well is we would realistically give that a go. We might end up with 6 hours of footage.
There would definitely be that if it'd be good quality and it'd be something we'd want to put out there. I don't know.
Kind of listen to it back and go, right, is there anything interesting here?
Yeah, maybe we can chunk it up, because I don't think anyone's going to go, oh wait, I could listen to this 20-minute episode which has the same quality as and amount of content that's useful, or 6 hours. I think I was going to choose the 20-minute one.
Maybe like a live stream on a train or something. But than that, I don't know, but I think we talked a lot about the next block of work we do, if we do it, maybe just being me and you.
Yeah.
And then we've just sat there and talked about how we'd love to engage with creatives as well. But I think what we're developing and what we have been developing in this release of this series, in that we released 3 episodes and then there was a break and then we do like one more, then we do this.
Yeah.
Is that it's quite a sporadic, improvised kind of, let's do that because it feels good approach, which we could maybe take forward in a way. So we might do 2 or 3 episodes on our own. There might be a moment then when we feel compelled to talk to someone, and then we might do something else,
Yeah. No, that kind of brings it that the art show is a thing that's not us two.
Yeah.
Or is that what it is? Like I've had people know the art show before they've realised it's us that do it in conversations. But I also have had it the other way around and going, oh, you're that person that does the art show.
Yeah.
So it would be quite, there's a lot of ideas that could come out of it. It could be, is it that art show is hosted by other people for a bit?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's an idea we've toyed with, haven't we?
And we definitely have when we've handed the show over to somebody that it's more relevant for them to be doing the show than us.
Yeah.
That was during the radio show. So we've kind of got this, that it does work. It really does work. But is the art show more than just us two talking? Could it be? So, for example, the thing that springs to mind is the Kermode and Mayo podcast called The Take. If they're not available, The Take still happens every week.
Really? Yeah.
With different people. Eventually, they become the regular people.
Okay.
But there was a period of time recently where they weren't there for a little while, and it was the 2 new presenters doing The Take. Same format. Yeah. It would have been a completely different show. We're still hearing film reviews, and we're still learning about that kind of industry. But shows can do that, and that's what's quite nice about it being a show rather than about the Nick and Nigel podcast.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea, because you wouldn't get that, say, for example, in a business. The arts offers the ability for people to just like release their grip on an idea and release control.
Yeah.
I suppose the conflict for me is, we're talking about all of this investment in time and energy, and all through the lockdowns and all of the work you've done. Then you get busy and you kind of release your grip and you drift away. I'm sure, honestly, being completely open, there might be a moment where I go, I wish I'd continued doing it. I'm really happy for the people that are doing it now. And I'm so happy that other people are involved. But I've now lost my opportunity to do what I was doing before. And I suppose you could still shape the show. I quite like the idea of a group of people that are shaping and doing all of that kind of stuff. But being honest, that process of releasing that bit of grip probably would be a little tricky for me in a way.
Yeah, it would be tricky, because a lot of the show is to do with our kind of relationship.
Yeah.
But you've got to bring it back to what is the core of the art show, and it's to inspire other people inspire you to live a more creative life.
Absolutely.
And if we're not doing that, then the core of the show isn't being met. It might be helpful to hear that from other people. If that's what's going to inspire them, inevitably will inspire us, probably bring us back to the microphones.
Yeah, I agree.
That sounds slightly like we're using other people for us to get
get
inspiration.
I think it's useful for a certain point in your career as well.
Yeah.
In that, when we were doing it, we were like a real like start of the kind of emerging creative journey.
Yeah.
And it was so beneficial for us then. It would be beneficial for us to continue. But for people that have more time and space, realistically, to do it,
Yeah.
the amount to learn and grow from, even just not saying all the time when you're broadcasting, which is something I've become not as good at now. But even, for performers, just having the opportunity to tune up your broadcasting skills and do that is a massive opportunity. And I think moving forward, I don't quite know how to approach all of these ideas that we're talking about and how we actually might structure all of this. I know we've got one episode left to release, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're recording this. We've just released Greedy Pigs episode, and we've got Tessa's to release.
And then we're kind of free to...
I think we need to go with what we believe for us, because we don't have we can't ask everybody else who listens what we're finding most exciting, because what we have realised is we now know, when we have now released these podcasts, now that we did the radio show, that there's more benefits, as I said earlier on, that we can see in hindsight and on reflection than we did doing it.
Yeah.
And actually the benefits, and you kind of, that's because you kind of look back and go, there's the link back to why I did it, and now I'm able to do that work, or I met that person and they was offered some freelance work, and then all of, like, there's connections that are built from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We now don't know what these new connections could be and what the future outside of the art show, but the benefit of doing the art show, we don't know what they are until we've done it.
Absolutely.
So I think we can only really go off of what we find, what we are most excited about. If we're most excited about doing a series of podcasts on a train,
yeah,
and we have between one stop and another, so some podcasts are going to be 30 seconds, some are going to be a lot longer. Like, that is that's quite if that's the most exciting thing, that's the one we should run with.
Yeah, I agree.
And kind of setting ourselves the goal that and the big reason we ended up going to podcasting is because we couldn't dedicate to every Sunday morning 10 till 12 we're going to do a show.
Yeah,
there is that freedom now.
Yeah, just to
there is starting
on.
to become, like, with podcasting, expectations for things to be as regular. But we're not at that level. Our show's not at that level, and
it's fine.
And actually, if we're not at that level at the moment, and there is a potential for that to be at that level in the future, we should kind of relish the chance of not doing it.
Absolutely.
Whilst we can also do other things.
I kind of get annoyed actually with the way that everything seems to raise expectations so high, so quickly. I love moments where things are in such early stages. I'm kind of thinking a little bit about even AI at the moment, just to take a real... It's in its infancy.
Yeah.
And no one really knows what on earth's going on. There's loads of ethical issues surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to come across like I'm pushing it, because I'm really mad at a lot of what's going on with AI. But I am enjoying the creative freedom of no one actually setting a bar or knowing quite what to do with it. I am scared in the podcasting space of the expectations. You look at something like Diary of a CEO. Mm-hmm. That is a level that is completely unattainable by most people in creatives, really.
Yeah.
You just can't produce something like that without huge amounts of budget, time, and he does an amazing job.
Yeah.
Or the team does. I'm sure there's a team behind it as well. I don't really know. But the idea of having to almost have a setup like this, right? Every single week, and have guests, have social media posts coming out, and all of that churning is really, really scary, and it annoys me actually a little bit.
You notice that a lot of the best, I'm not going to say best actually, a lot of the successful podcasts are off the back of a audience that's generated from another platform.
Right.
And it's brought to that. So you get a lot of YouTubers that start a podcast because they have the space to be able to set up multiple cameras and generate social content, and they have a social media following already. So then people see that they're doing a podcast, and all of those extra things and assets that they would naturally already have because they're developed on another platform, they can bring to this world, and it kind of saturates people that have only done podcasts to do podcasts, and people that aren't able to quickly ring up somebody. Not that they're not putting any hard work in at all. Actually, I think it is a lot of hard work, and they're probably sacrificing quite a bit to be able to have constant, do a lot of content creation of either it's on YouTube, social media content on TikTok, or doing a podcast. But they there is an element of it being slightly easier to be successful in that platform and generate then revenue and monetize it and get sponsorship and all of that stuff. It is really hard to generate that kind of listenership and audience base when you don't have it from somewhere else. They've obviously had to have to go from zero to nothing in one way, in one platform, and it's very smart to then go bring it to another platform, bring another revenue stream, but it does make it hard.
It makes it, like, seriously hard.
Yeah.
Because in a way, and I've noticed this with work I've been releasing recently, the goal then maybe becomes about the growth bit and not about the content.
Yeah.
And the actual bit that you were originally excited about doing, you're then suddenly thrust into a space of like, oh, well, I've just released this and it hasn't got as much engagement as I do digital marketing as a profession. So obviously I'm going to have those kind of battles when I'm releasing my own personal work. Really, I don't care what engagement is like, as long as people that do listen enjoy the work and we enjoy making the work. You know, that's fundamentally it. But it is hard to turn those kind of expectations off. Working with younger emerging creatives, it's very difficult to tell them that trying to build from the ground up is close to impossible, as you said.
Yeah.
You know? Like you said, unless you can scale one platform really quickly or build an audience, I think you can go offline to online, but that's incredibly difficult as well. Maybe on a local level, that kind of works. But yeah, it's essentially building profile and then diving into something like podcasting. Unless you've got that, is going to be close to impossible. Without funding, even harder. Yeah. Because you literally, I mean, we're lucky in that we can design assets and, you know, there's video cameras here and microphones and all of the kit. But if you don't have that knowledge and you're having to pay people too, how on earth are you going to get something off the ground?
It was impossible.
It's impossible. Like, it really is. And I think that's sad because, like, I suppose the origins of this medium rest back in radio, even local radio you could consider, where it was much more about keeping communities up to date, and it was quite accessible. That's what I do like about radio, is it's very accessible for anyone to give it a go. So maybe if there are people listening that are thinking about building from the ground up and going into podcasting, a good start might at least be to find a local radio station like we did, hone your skills, and then build some kind of profile in some way on the side and then launch a podcast. I don't know.
Well, it kind of all comes back to, it is the quality of the content and the delivery of the content that will either make it successful or not. All those other assets and other kind of areas are there to, like, promote the good quality content that is at the heart of it. And it's either that's the learning, the kind of entertainment factor, the quality of the piece of art that you're making, and then you're using social media to promote that art. If the art's not great, you might get a little bit of of engagement, but it's going to go because people want to just keep engaging with good quality stuff.
They do. And I think realistically, on our own journey, something we've talked about a lot is that if you are putting content out and you aren't getting the engagement, that's fine.
Yeah.
You just have to keep going.
You do.
Like, it's very difficult to concept something that is going to be absolutely mind-blowingly engaging and then release it and have that as a success. I don't know about you, but personally, I've been learning a lot my own work recently by just being comfortable with going, as like you said almost at the start of the episode, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that. I'm going to release that. I'm not releasing it because I'm in a rush or because I'm being lazy or anything like that. It's just that I genuinely think it's at a good point. And then if it doesn't do as well, that's okay, because then I can sit and go, okay, what did I learn from that? I remember a conversation we were having about social media the other day, and you were reflecting on how pieces of content that you'd released were doing better when they were captioned and it had you in it, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, and you would just, how long did you spend? I think you spent a couple of months learning about your content, didn't you? I did the same thing.
It's posting stuff, checking if it works. What I don't like, this is actually kind of probably a whole podcast episode in the future, is how as a video creator, and as being my primary medium that I create more stuff daily, my creativity is dictated by a social media platform now. Yeah. And knowing I can't bring in a lower third from the bottom left and slide it in as I always had done, because the reel, it's talking about Instagram, gets slightly stretched when you play it back, but if you share it, it's in this format, but then so it would work. It's kind of this. I know what I'm talking about. No one else does. But
yeah, but even though I've been through that myself as well, in less technical way, but as in where stuff just doesn't look right.
Yeah,
because of Instagram's different formatting options.
They've decided to do it that way, and then now I can't do my lower thirds in that way anymore. Yeah. They have to just fade in from the middle, so because I know they're not going to be cropped out of the video.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like being dictated in that way. Now all of my content wanting to be in portrait, but also has to be in landscape.
Yeah,
that's a whole conversation that is just starting to get really annoying and really hard, and it's pretty because again the quality drops if you favor one way. If you favor landscape over horizontal over portrait, the portrait or the horizontal suffers whichever way you do it. And it's kind of like, again, this is another conversation, but like it being the social media like the way doing one thing and only using 3 hashtags instead of 4 gets you 10 times more engagement. That's just really annoying.
Yeah, it's boring.
You can't keep up with it.
No.
Makes you feel really rubbish if you don't get the engagement, because you know that if you know the quality is good and you're getting good feedback verbally or from people that you trust, you can they're saying that the quality's there, but then you don't get engagement because you want people to hear it or you want people to see it.
Yeah.
It really is really annoying.
It is annoying. It's like, I don't even know if there's a solution to it, because coupled with the amount of content that you're expected to produce in order to scale as well. I mean, with the work I've been releasing at the moment, I cannot actually meet the content demands, because if I did, then I would be rushing pieces that I just can't rush. Sometimes a piece of work for me is going to take 2-3 weeks. And I don't like the way that creators are essentially penalized for thinking critically about the work before they release it. Yeah. And it's all too easy to say, and we've had these conversations, it's easy to say, well, yeah, you need to diversify your content mix and do pieces to camera and do this, that, and the other, which is absolutely fine. But if you've got your thing that you're focusing on, and again, it goes back to talking about doing it on the side, you can't just turn into a content house and start planning out content strategies and I would love to do bits to camera where I'm doing like tutorials and talking about how I make my work and stuff like that. But shouldn't it be enough that work is able to get traction on its own? And I know TikTok is much better for this, but generally from what I've heard from other marketers with TikTok, the general rule of thumb is that you do need to be posting a lot of content before TikTok will actually kind of start to scale your content. So either whatever platform you're using, it's the same kind of struggles. I mean, going back to what you were saying about your videos, from someone who's not a videographer, not a photographer, I probably won't ever watch anything that's in landscape on Instagram.
No.
Just because I can't have a viewing experience that in the same way that I can with portrait.
No.
Well, I almost feel like now the phone has forced content into a portrait medium. And I don't really understand, but I sympathise with you, because how on earth do you create something that's engaging on a medium that is portrait, but then you've got a load of users that are viewing it on a desktop as well?
Yeah, it's that. If it's knowing it's only dedicated for one area, then it's fine, because you film and you do everything for that one dedicated orientation. But then again, I suppose the industry is always dictated by some kind of technology and the development of technology. Everything used to be square in film.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Oh, Jesus.
So and that's because film changed to this, and then a lens came out which meant this thing called anamorphic, and you could film in this one wide screen, and then they went to IMAX, and now IMAX is at 77mm, I think. I can't remember the specific. And it's like technology does usually dictate your creativity, but it's hard when you're having to do like 100 different platforms but you've only got one opportunity to get that person shaking that person's hand and make it look good for that video.
Fully see that. I mean, I've recently just gone back I wrote a blog the other day just for SEO, and I really enjoyed it too, because I was freed out of the social media space. I could spend lots of time reflecting about what I was writing about, and there are people that browse the internet still today. I think young marketers in particular forget this, even though social is so important, it's so powerful. There are lots of people that will find you on your website through the content that you're putting out there. I absolutely loved it.
But it was the process that you loved.
I love the process. I love the fact that I wasn't thinking about hashtags or anything like that. It was structured, and I was thinking about an approach, but it was really freeing to kind of do that. So I'm definitely going to be exploring a lot more of that, but I don't think blogging is probably going to keep my kind of growth or anything like that. But I've also, to be honest with you, I'm at the point now where I'm just releasing stuff, and if and when that happens, it happens. Because, like I said, I spend so much time in my day job doing marketing. I don't want to apply that to my actual life.
Yeah. What's your life marketing plan? I don't know.
I can't do that. I'm excited to think about it with the podcast, though. You know, if we move forward, how to start to think about how we get this out. Because realistically, being critical, we've had these conversations. We know that when we put a post out, we are using a single image, square image, with a caption, predominantly on Instagram, which is a recipe for disaster, really, and growth. So to think about how we might take a different approach to that, and even like you were suggesting, where we do exactly what we're doing now, and we have cameras on us, and we can then chop this up into...
Should we try something for our engagement for this episode that we're going to put out?
Yeah, what do you want to do?
I think, so Nigel,
yes,
I'd like you to do a few reactions to as if I said something really, really cool.
Really cool. Yeah, okay, fine.
So
do I get a cue or?
No.
I just have to do them. Okay, fine. Okay, so number one. Oh. Okay.
Nice.
Was that right?
That was pretty good.
Number two.
With a phrase.
God damn. It's going to be the weirdest thing. The problem is, I slipped into our own personal friendship humour there, and now that's on camera. Okay, so number three, I'll do a serious one with a phrase that isn't an in-joke kind of thing. That is amazing. Was that a bit intense?
Maybe without the mic clipping.
That is amazing.
Nice. And if I intersperse it, we'll intersperse this reel now that we'll put together going... I just honestly couldn't believe that they even said that. Oh, that is so interesting.
Wow.
And one final one. Oh,
yeah, I like that.
Now,
yeah, that brought it nicely.
So if we'll intercut those, you will see this out on social media, and that hopefully will be the trailer for the episode.
I think it should be.
And we'll see if that gets us any engagement and brings us people to talk and listening to this currently 53 minutes.
Is it 53 minutes?
Yes.
That's probably a good time to call it a day.
I think it is. But what we'll do is we'll bring back in the lovely, lovely outro. Have you got any kind of final thoughts on just a quick kind of short little phrase about how you found the last 6 episode podcasts?
I think, learning from creatives is a genuine privilege. And if you're boxed in, you're on your own, and you're trying to fight the whole world on your own, then just get out there and talk to someone else that's doing something like it. What about you?
Echoing that, actually, that a lot of your inspiration will come from actively doing something to get that from you. It doesn't come from doing nothing. Go and watch things, go and listen to people, go talk to people, engage with arts. Everything is a stimulus for you to create work. Sometimes maybe, as I said right at the start of the podcast, learn a language, you might be able to write a book. There's so many things that can inspire you to live a more creative life, and we do hope that these kind of past 6 episodes, and maybe not so much this one, but we hope that has inspired you to live a brilliant creative life. Follow us on social media.